The letter arrived at 2:14 a.m., unsigned, unmarked, slipped. Under the door of a small office in Whitehall, Detective Chief Inspector Andrew Pemberton had been with the Metropolitan Police for 23 years. He had investigated terrorism, corruption, murder, but he had never seen anything like this. The envelope was thick. Expensive paper. No return address. Just his name written in careful block letters. He opened it with a letter opener. Inside were photographs, documents, handwritten notes, and a USB drive. His hands trembled as he looked at the first photograph. It showed Queen Camilla in a private garden, speaking with a man Andrew didn't recognize. The date stamp read 3 months ago. The next photo showed them exchanging something. A folder, papers. Andrew's chest tightened. He inserted the USB drive into his computer. A single file appeared. Audio recording. 27 minutes long. He pressed play. Camilla's voice came through clearly, calm, measured. He's becoming unpredictable. The physicians are concerned. If something were to happen naturally, the transition would be seamless. A man's voice responded. Cold, professional. What if it doesn't happen naturally? A pause. Then Camilla spoke again. Then we ensure it does. Andrew stopped the recording. His pulse hammered in his ears. He replayed it. Listened again. The words didn't change. He looked at the documents. Medical records. King Charles's private health. Information, prescriptions, dosages, and handwritten notes in the margins. Adjustments. Suggestions. Signed with initials. C.R. Queen. Camilla Regina. If you're intrigued by this story, subscribe now. You won't want to miss what happens next. Andrew stood and paced his office. This couldn't be real. It had to be a hoax. Setup. Someone trying to cause a scandal, but the audio was clean, professional. No signs of editing. And the documents looked authentic. Official letterheads. Royal seals. He sat back down. Pulled out his phone. Who could he call? Who could he trust with something like this? His phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. You've seen the evidence. There's more. Meet me at Westminster Bridge. South Side. 4 a.m. Come alone. Andrew stared at the message. Every instinct told him this was dangerous, that he should report it. Follow protocol. But if even a fraction of this was true, protocol wouldn't matter. This was bigger than protocol. He grabbed his coat, checked his watch. 3:41 a.m. He had 19 minutes. The streets of London were empty. Cold October wind cut through the city. Andrew walked quickly. His breath visible in the night air. Westminster Bridge stretched before him. The Thames black and silent below. Big Ben stood watch in the distance. A figure waited near the railing. Hooded jacket. Hands in pockets. Watching the water, Andrew approached slowly. His hand instinctively near his phone. Ready to call for backup? The figure turned, and Andrew's breath caught. It was a royal guard. Full-dress uniform under a civilian coat. The red fabric unmistakable, even in the dim light. Game, the guard said. His voice was young, nervous. Who are you? My name is Thomas Whitmore. I've served the royal household for 4 years, and I've seen things. Things that should never happen. The letter. The recordings? That was you? Thomas nodded. I didn't know who else to turn to. I tried to ignore it. Told myself I was imagining things. But then I heard the conversation. Recorded it on my phone during a private meeting. I was posted outside the study. The door was slightly open. Andrew stepped closer. Do you understand what you're accusing the Queen Consort of? Conspiracy to harm the king? Yes, I understand. Why come to me? Why not go through official channels? Thomas laughed bitterly. Official channels? She has people everywhere. In the palace. In the government. I reported a concern once. A minor thing. Within a day, I was reassigned. Warned to keep my observations to myself. So you went rogue? I went to someone who might actually investigate. Someone outside her reach. Andrew studied him. The guard's face was pale. exhausted, but his eyes were clear, certain. "If this is real," Andrew said carefully, "you've just put both our lives in danger. I know. And if it's not real, you've committed a serious crime. I know that too." They stood in silence. The wind howled across the bridge. Andrew felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Either this young guard was telling the truth, and the monarchy was facing its darkest hour, or this was an elaborate lie that would destroy them both. Andrew made his choice. "Tell me everything." They moved to a 24-hour cafe near Waterloo Station, a place with dark corners and few customers at this hour. Andrew ordered 2 coffees. Thomas kept his coat on, his uniform hidden beneath. "Start from the beginning," Andrew said. Thomas wrapped his hands around the warm cup. "It started 6 months ago. King Charles's health declined. Nothing dramatic? Just fatigue, memory lapses. The palace said it was stress. Age, normal things. But you didn't think so? I've been around him for years. I know what normal looks like. This was different, sudden, and it got worse after the medication changed." Andrew leaned forward. "What medication?" "His heart condition. He's been on the same prescription for a decade. Then 3 months ago, it changed. New dosage. New pharmaceutical company. His physician said it was an upgrade. Better formulation, and within 2 weeks, he was worse. Dizzy, confused. He fell once. Nearly collapsed during a private meeting. Did anyone else notice?" Thomas nodded. The staff whispered. But whispers don't reach the people who matter, and those who tried to speak up were reassigned, silenced. Andrew pulled out a notebook, started writing. "You mentioned a conversation between Queen Camilla and someone else. A man named Dr. Marcus Holt, private physician. He's not on the official palace medical team, but he's been visiting regularly. Always after hours. Always through private entrances. And you heard them discussing the king's health." Thomas reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone. He scrolled through files, found the recording, played a section. Camilla's voice. The transition must appear natural. No suspicion. The public must believe it was simply his time. Dr. Holt. The current dosage will achieve that within 8 to 12 weeks. Perhaps sooner, if we increase slightly. Camilla. No, we stay the course. Patience is critical. Andrew felt his blood run cold. He listened to the entire clip. 27 minutes of careful planning. Clinical discussion of the king's deterioration. Timelines. Contingencies. "This is a death sentence," Andrew said quietly. "That's why I came to you." Andrew looked around the cafe. An elderly man read a newspaper in the corner. A young woman typed on her laptop near the window. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that a few feet away, a plot against the monarchy was being exposed. "If this recording is authentic," Andrew said, "we need more. We need proof of the medication change. Access to his medical records, evidence that Dr. Holt is administering something harmful. I can get you inside." "Inside where?" "The palace. There's a shift change tomorrow at 6 a.m. I can bring you in as part of the security briefing. You'll have access to the medical wing. 30 minutes. Maybe less." Andrew shook his head. "That's insane. If we're caught, if we do nothing, the king dies." The words hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. Andrew drained his coffee. He thought about his career, his reputation, his family, everything he stood to lose. But he also thought about duty, about the oath he had taken to protect and serve, about what it meant to look away when a crime was being committed. "If we do this," Andrew said, "we do it right. No mistakes, no half measures. We gather evidence, document everything, and we go straight to the authorities who can act on it." "Who?" "The palace reports to her. The government won't move without proof, and by the time we have enough proof through official channels, it'll be too late." Andrew stared at him. The guard was right. Traditional investigation would take weeks, Months. The king didn't have that time. Tomorrow morning, Andrew said. 6 a.m., I'll meet you at the staff entrance. But if this is a setup, if you're lying, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your life in prison. Thomas met his eyes. I'm not lying. They parted ways as dawn broke over London. Andrew walked home through empty streets, his mind racing, planning, calculating risks. He arrived at his flat just after 5, showered, changed into plain clothes. He left his badge and official identification at home. If this went wrong, he wanted deniability. At 5:47 a.m., he stood outside the palace staff entrance, a small door tucked away from public view. Thomas appeared moments later. No longer in civilian clothes, full red dress uniform, official, authoritative. Follow my lead, Thomas said. Don't speak unless spoken to. Keep your head down. They entered. The corridor was narrow. Stone walls. Low lighting. The smell of old wood and polish to other guards stood at an interior checkpoint. They nodded at Thomas. Barely glanced at Andrew. Security briefing, Thomas said casually. New protocols. They waved him through. Andrew's heart hammered. They were inside Buckingham Palace, walking down corridors that housed centuries of history, of power. Thomas led him through a maze of hallways. Staff members passed, maids, assistants. No one questioned their presence. They reached a stairwell, descended to a lower level, the medical wing. Thomas stopped at a locked door. He pulled out a key. I borrowed this from the night supervisor. We have 10 minutes before shift change. After that, the wing will be fully staffed. He unlocked the door. They slipped inside. The medical wing was quiet. Clinical rows of cabinets. Filing systems. Computer terminals. Andrew moved quickly. He found the records room. Started searching. King Charles. Medical files. Current prescriptions. He photographed everything. The medication. The dosages. The dates of change. And the signature authorizing it, Dr. Marcus Holt. But beneath Holt's signature was another. A counter-signature. Required for royal medical changes. Queen. Camilla's name, clear, official. Andrew's hands shook as he captured the image. This was it. Documented proof of her involvement. We need to go, Thomas whispered urgently. Now, they heard footsteps. Voices approaching. The morning staff arriving early, they moved toward the door. But it opened before they reached it. A woman in a white coat stood there. Dr. Holt's assistant. Her eyes widened when she saw them. What are you doing in here? Thomas stepped forward. Routine security check. This area is off limits during security checks. You know that. Drew's mind raced. They were caught, exposed. And then Thomas did something Andrew didn't expect. He grabbed the woman's arm. Gently, but firmly. And he spoke in a low, urgent voice. Listen to me. The king is in danger. We need your help. The woman's name was Dr. Sarah Chen. She had worked in the Royal Medical Wing for 8 years, dedicated, loyal, and right now, terrified. You need to leave, she said. Before I call security, we are security, Thomas said. And we've uncovered something you need to see. Andrew stepped forward, showed her his identification. Metropolitan Police. Detective Chief Inspector. I'm investigating possible harm to the king. Sarah's face went pale. That's impossible. His condition is being carefully monitored by Dr. Marcus Holt. She hesitated. Yes, among others. When was the king's medication changed? 3 months ago, Dr. Holt recommended a new formulation, better cardiac support. Andrew pulled out his phone, showed her the photographs, the medical records, the signatures. Does this dosage look correct to you? Sarah studied the image. Her professional training taking over. She zoomed in. Read the prescription carefully. Her expression changed. Confusion, then alarm. This can't be right, she whispered. What do you mean? This dosage. It's too high. Far too high for someone with the king's cardiac profile. This level would cause severe complications, arrhythmia, possible cardiac arrest. Could it be a mistake? Not a mistake. This is a controlled substance. Every milligram is documented. Approved. This was intentional. Thomas and Andrew exchanged glances. They had confirmation. A medical professional verifying what they suspected. Has anyone else noticed? Andrew asked. I raised concerns 2 weeks ago. About the king's declining condition, I suggested reviewing his medications. I was told it was under control. That Dr. Holt was handling it personally. Who told you that? Sarah's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Queen Camilla. The three of them stood in silence. The weight of the revelation pressing down. We need to get this to someone who can act on it, Andrew said. Someone beyond Palace's influence. The Home Secretary, Sarah suggested. She has authority over royal security matters. Can we trust her? I don't know who we can trust anymore. Thomas moved to the door, listened for movement outside. We need to leave. The morning rounds start in 5 minutes. Sarah grabbed Andrew's arm. Wait, if you're taking this to authorities, you'll need more than photographs. You'll need physical evidence. The actual medication. She moved to a locked cabinet, entered a code. Inside were rows of labeled containers. She found the one marked for King Charles, handed it to Andrew. This is his current prescription. Get it analyzed. It will prove the dosage is wrong. Andrew took the bottle carefully, slipped it into his coat pocket. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just stop this. They exited the medical wing separately. Thomas led Andrew back through the corridors. Different route. Avoiding the main checkpoints, they were almost to the staff entrance when a voice called out behind them.
Allies.
A word, they froze. Turned, a senior palace official stood there, distinguished, gray hair. Cold eyes. His name was Lord Ashford, head of royal household security. What brings you to this wing at this hour? Ashford asked. Thomas straightened. Professional. Calm. Security briefing, sir. New protocols for medical wing access. I wasn't informed of any such briefing. Last-minute addition, sir. Following the incident last week, Ashford's eyes narrowed. What incident? Thomas didn't blink. The unauthorized access attempt, logged Tuesday evening. It was a gamble. A complete fabrication. But Thomas delivered it with such confidence that Ashford paused. I'll need to review that report. Of course, sir. I'll have it on your desk within the hour. Ashford looked at Andrew. And you are? Consultant, Andrew said. Advising on updated protocols? From which agency? Home Office. Security Division. Another lie. But Andrew's years as a detective had taught him how to sell it. Steady voice. Direct eye contact. No hesitation. Ashford studied them both. The moment stretched. Tense. Uncertain. Finally, he nodded. Very well. Carry on. But I expect that report, Thomas. Yes, sir. They continued walking, slow, controlled, every instinct screaming to run. They reached the staff entrance. Stepped outside into the cold morning air. Only then did Thomas exhale. That was too close. You handled it well. We need to move fast. Once Ashford realizes there's no report, he'll start asking questions. They walked quickly away from the palace, blended into the early morning commuters. Andrew pulled out his phone, called a colleague he trusted absolutely. Davies, I need a favor. Urgent. No questions. What do you need? Lab analysis. Pharmaceutical. Highest priority. In complete discretion. When? Now? Andrew met Davies at a private lab in South London. A place that handled sensitive police cases. No connections to official channels. Davies took the medication bottle. Examined it. What am I looking for? Dosage verification. Chemical composition. Anything that shouldn't be there. How fast do you need results? Yesterday. Davies disappeared into the lab. Andrew paced the waiting room. Thomas sat rigid, still in uniform, drawing curious glances. 2 hours passed. Then Davies emerged, his face grim. "You were right to bring this in. What'd you find?" "The medication is correct, but the dosage is modified. 3 times the recommended amount for someone with chronic cardiac issues. Long-term use at this level would cause progressive heart failure." Andrew felt his chest tighten. "How long?" "Weeks, maybe months. Depends on the patient's overall health. But the outcome is inevitable." Thomas stood. "We have our proof." "We have evidence," Andrew corrected. "But we need to move carefully. If we go public too soon, they'll deny everything. Claim the medications were switched accidentally. Create reasonable doubt. So what do we do?" Andrew thought for a moment. "We need to get to the king directly. Warn him. Get him to change physicians. Replace his medication." "How?" "He's surrounded by palace staff, all loyal to her. Then we find someone he trusts, someone who can reach him privately." Thomas's eyes widened. "Prince William." Andrew nodded slowly. "The heir. If anyone can get through to the king, it's his son." "How do we reach him?" "Very carefully." That evening, Andrew drafted a letter. Simple, direct, factual. He included copies of the evidence, the medical records, the lab analysis, the recording. He addressed it to Prince William. Personal and confidential. Thomas knew a staff member at William's residence, someone trustworthy, someone who could deliver the letter without it passing through official channels. They met her in a park near Kensington Palace. A young woman named Emma. She listened to their story with growing horror. "If this is true," she said, "it's treason. It's murder," Thomas corrected. Emma took the envelope. "I'll put it directly in his hands. Tonight." "No one can know," Andrew warned. "Not until he's read it. Not until he's had time to act." She nodded, slipped the envelope into her bag, walked away. Andrew and Thomas sat on a bench, watching the sun set over London. "What happens now?" Thomas asked. "Now we wait, and hope that we haven't just signed our own death warrants." Prince William read the letter at 11:34 p.m. He sat alone in his study at Kensington Palace. The children asleep upstairs. Catherine away on a private engagement. He read it once, then again, his hands trembling. The evidence was undeniable. The medical records, the audio recording, the laboratory analysis, all pointing to one horrifying conclusion. His stepmother was poisoning his father. William stood, paced the room, his mind reeling. Part of him wanted to dismiss it as conspiracy, fabrication, but the evidence was too thorough, too specific. He picked up his phone, started to call his father, stopped. If Camilla had people monitoring communications, a direct call would alert her. He needed to see the king in person, privately. Without palace staff present, William made a decision. He called his father's private secretary, a man he had known since childhood, someone he trusted. "I need to see my father. Tomorrow morning, early, before his official schedule begins." "Your Royal Highness, the king has a full calendar. Cancel it. This is urgent. Family matter." Pause. "Then of course, sir, I'll arrange it." William hung up. He gathered the evidence, placed it in a secure case. He would show his father everything. Let him make the final decision. But first, he needed to verify something himself. He called his personal physician, Dr. Michael Bradford, a man who had treated the royal family for decades. "Michael, I need you to review some medical records, privately, tonight." "Is everything all right?" "No, nothing is all right." Dr. Bradford arrived within the hour. William showed him the documents, the prescription, the dosages. Bradford's face went gray as he read. "Dear God, is it what I think it is? This dosage would be lethal over time. Gradual cardiac failure. It would appear natural. Heart attack, stroke, no one would question it. Could it be a mistake? Not with these signatures. This was authorized at the highest level. William felt rage building inside him. Cold, focused. Can it be reversed? If we stop the medication now, switch to proper dosage, his heart should recover. Some damage may be permanent, but he'd survive. How long has he been on this? According to these records, 3 months. How much time does he have? Bradford hesitated. Weeks. Maybe less if the dosage continues. William thanked him, sent him home with strict instructions to tell no one. Then he sat in darkness, processing, planning. His stepmother had tried to murder his father. For power. For the crown. For her place in history. And she had almost succeeded. The next morning, William arrived at Buckingham Palace at 6 a.m. The king was in his private chambers, reading briefings. Drinking tea, he looked frail, tired, older than his years. William Charles said warmly, "This is a surprise. Is everything well?" "No, father. It's not." William closed the door. Locked it. He pulled out the evidence. Laid it on the table between them. "Need to see this. All of it. Before you say anything. Before you dismiss it, just look." Charles put on his reading glasses. Started with the medical records. His expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to horror. He listened to the audio recording. His face drained of color. When he finished, he sat in silence, staring at nothing, his hands shaking. "She wouldn't," he whispered. "She couldn't. The evidence is clear. Camilla loves me. We've built a life together. A partnership. She wants power more."
Ousted.
Walked to the window. Looked out over the palace gardens. "If this becomes public, it will destroy the monarchy. If we do nothing, it will destroy you." The king turned. For a moment, William saw not a monarch, but a man. Broken, betrayed, lost. "What do you suggest?" "We replace your medication immediately. We remove Dr. Holt from your care. And we confront her. Privately, give her one chance to leave quietly. And if she refuses, then we have no choice. We turn the evidence over to authorities. Let justice take its course." Charles nodded slowly. "Do it. All of it. But I speak to her first. Alone." "Father, that's not safe. She's my wife. I owe her that much. One conversation. Then we proceed, as you suggest." William wanted to argue, but he saw the resolve in his father's eyes, the need for closure. "I'll be outside the door. Any sign of trouble, I'm coming in." That afternoon, Camilla was summoned to the king's private study. She arrived promptly, elegant, composed. Unaware of what awaited, Charles sat behind his desk. The evidence spread before him, his expression unreadable. "Sit down, Camilla." She did. Noticed the papers, the photographs. Her composure flickered. "Just for a moment. What is this?" "You tell me." She picked up one of the documents. Her authorization for the medication change, her signature clear. "Charles, I don't understand. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything." Mask cracked. She set down the paper, folded her hands in her lap. "How did you find out? Does it matter?" She laughed, bitter, cold. "I suppose not." "Why?" "Because you were going to leave me." Charles stared at her. "What?" "I heard you. Talking to your physicians. About stepping down, abdicating, retiring to Scotland. You were going to pass the crown to William. Leave public life. And leave me with nothing? That's not. I've spent decades building my reputation, fighting for respect, enduring mockery, hatred, all to stand beside you. And you were going to throw it away. Throw me away. So you decided to kill me. I decided to ensure the transition happened on my terms. With me as queen consort until the end. With dignity, legacy. Not cast aside like I meant nothing. Charles felt tears burning his eyes. I never wanted to cast you aside. I wanted to grow old with you, away from the spotlight. In peace, there is no peace for people like us, only duty. In survival, You've destroyed everything. I've protected what we've built. Charles pressed a button under his desk. The door opened. William entered. Behind him, 2 Scotland Yard detectives. Camilla saw them. Understood immediately. She stood. Composed herself. A queen to the end. I suppose there's no way out of this. You can cooperate, one of the detectives said. Make this easier on everyone, or we arrest you here. In front of palace staff. In front of the world? She looked at Charles one last time. I did love you. In my own way. Love doesn't murder, Camilla. She walked to the detectives. Extended her wrists. They placed her in handcuffs, discreetly, professionally, as they led her away. She didn't look back. Charles collapsed into his chair. William moved to his side, placed a hand on his shoulder. It's over, Father. No, it's just beginning. The scandal, the investigation, the trial. The monarchy will never recover from this. We'll find a way. Together. Outside news cameras had already gathered. Someone had leaked the story. Within minutes, headlines screamed across the world. Queen Camilla arrested, royal plot uncovered, attempted murder at Buckingham Palace. The monarchy faced its darkest hour. But in that darkness, truth had prevailed, and sometimes truth was the only thing worth saving. The trial began 4 months later. Spring had arrived in London, but inside the Old Bailey courtroom, the atmosphere was frozen. Queen Camilla sat in the dock, no longer adorned in jewels and crowns. Just a woman in a simple navy suit, her face composed, her eyes vacant. The prosecution presented their case methodically. The medical records, the audio recordings, Dr. Sarah Chen's testimony, the laboratory analysis proving the lethal dosage. The courtroom was packed. International media, legal experts, historians witnessing what would be remembered as the darkest chapter in modern royal history. Andrew Pemberton sat in the gallery, watching. He had been questioned extensively, his role in the investigation scrutinized. But ultimately, he had been vindicated, commended for his courage. Thomas Whitmore sat beside him. No longer a royal guard? He had resigned after the arrest. The weight of what he had witnessed too heavy to carry while serving the crown. Do you think she'll be convicted? Thomas asked quietly. The evidence is overwhelming, but she's the queen consort. That complicates things. On the witness stand, Dr. Marcus Holt testified. He had accepted a plea deal in exchange for his cooperation. His testimony was damning. Queen Camilla approached me 18 months ago, Holt said. His voice steady but hollow. She asked if there was a way to accelerate the king's declining health, make it appear natural. I initially refused, but she was persistent. And generous? She paid you? The prosecutor asked. £2 million, transferred to an offshore account. And what did she ask you to do? Gradually increase his cardiac medication to toxic levels. Monitor his deterioration. Ensure that when the end came, it would appear to be natural causes. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Charles sat in the front row, his face emotionless, but his hands gripped the armrest tightly. The defense tried to argue diminished capacity, claimed Camilla had suffered from stress, anxiety, that her judgment had been impaired. But the audio recordings destroyed that defense. Her voice was calm, calculated, fully aware of what she was. Orchestrating Dr. Sarah Chen testified about the medical protocols that were bypassed, the warnings that were ignored. I raised concerns multiple times, Sarah said. Each time, I was told to trust Dr. Holt's judgment. When I persisted, I was warned that my position was at risk. Who warned you? Lord Ashford. On Queen Camilla's instructions, Lord Ashford had also been arrested, charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice. His trial would follow. The prosecution called Prince William to the stand. The courtroom fell silent as he was sworn in. He recounted receiving the evidence, his meeting with his father, the confrontation with Camilla. Did she express remorse? The prosecutor asked. No, she expressed justification. She believed she was protecting her position, her legacy. At the cost of your father's life? Yes. The defense cross-examined aggressively, tried to suggest William had misinterpreted her words, that family dynamics had clouded his judgment. But William remained steady, clear, his testimony unshakable. When Camilla herself took the stand, the courtroom held its breath. She spoke softly, admitted to authorizing the medication change, but claimed she had trusted Dr. Holt's medical expertise, that she hadn't understood the implications. "You signed the authorization," the prosecutor said. "You approved the dosage. I trusted the medical professionals, but you knew your husband was deteriorating, thought it was part of his condition. Natural decline. Yet in the recording, you discuss ensuring his death appears natural. How do you explain that?" Camilla's composure finally cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. "I was speaking hypothetically, about succession planning. Not about actively harming him. The dosage nearly killed him. The laboratory evidence proves it was lethal, and you authorized it. That's not hypothetical. That's attempted murder." She had no answer. The trial lasted 7 weeks. Every detail examined, every piece of evidence scrutinized. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the foreman stood. The courtroom fell silent. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find the defendant?" "Guilty." "On the charge of attempted murder, how do you find the defendant?" "Guilty." Camilla closed her eyes. Her shoulders sagged. It was over. The judge addressed her directly. "You betrayed not only your husband, but the institution you swore to serve. You used your position of trust to orchestrate a plot that would have ended the king's life. The sentence for such crimes must reflect their gravity. You are hereby sentenced to 25 years in prison. You will be stripped of all royal titles and privileges. You will never again hold any position within the royal household or the United Kingdom government." Camilla was led away. No final statement. No plea for mercy. Just silence. Outside the courthouse, crowds had gathered. Some cheered. Some wept. The monarchy had survived, but it would never be the same. Andrew and Thomas stood among them, watching history unfold. Was it worth it? Thomas asked. Everything we risked? Andrew thought about the nights of fear, the investigation, the danger. The king is alive. Justice was served. Yes, it was worth it. What happens now? Now we try to heal. All of us. King Charles addressed the nation that evening, his voice strong despite the ordeal. Today, justice was served, but it came at a tremendous cost. Trust has been broken. The institution I love has been wounded, but we will rebuild. We will learn from this tragedy, and we will emerge stronger. He paused. Look directly into the camera. I want to thank those who had the courage to expose the truth. The detective who investigated despite the risks, the guard who reported what he witnessed, the medical professionals who provided evidence. Their bravery saved my life, and perhaps saved the monarchy itself. The speech resonated. Slowly, public opinion began to shift. From shock and outrage to cautious hope, reforms were implemented. Medical oversight strengthened. Security protocols updated. Transparency increased. The scandal would be studied for generations. A cautionary tale of power, ambition, and betrayal, but also of courage, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of truth prevailing against overwhelming odds. Thomas found work as a private security consultant. He never spoke publicly about his role, but those who knew him as a hero. Andrew continued his work with the Metropolitan Police. He was promoted, recognized, but he remained humble, focused on the work rather than the accolades. Dr. Sarah Chen returned to medical practice. Her testimony had been vindicated. Her courage acknowledged, then King Charles recovered. His health improved once the proper medication was restored. He continued his duties with renewed purpose. He never remarried, never fully trusted again. But he found peace in his work, in his family, in the knowledge that he had survived the darkest betrayal imaginable, and every year, On the anniversary of the verdict, he sent personal letters to Andrew, Thomas, and Sarah. Simple words. Thank you. For everything. Sometimes that was all that needed to be said. 5 years later, the world had moved on. New scandals. New headlines. New crises to captivate the public's attention. But for those who had lived through it, the scars remained. Thomas Whitmore sat in a quiet pub in Yorkshire. Far from London, far from the palace, far from the memories that still haunted his dreams, he had built a new life. Married, started a family. Found work that didn't require him to witness the darkness humans were capable of. But some nights, he still heard the audio recording. Camilla's calm voice discussing her husband's death like a business transaction. A man approached his table. Older, distinguished, familiar. Andrew Pemberton. Mind if I join you? Andrew asked. Thomas gestured to the empty chair. It's been a while. 5 years. Almost to the day. They ordered drinks. Sat in comfortable silence for a moment. I saw you gave an interview last month, Thomas said. About police reform. Whistleblower protections. Someone has to speak up. Make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to others. You think it made a difference? I hope so. Change is slow. But it happens. One case at a time, Thomas nodded. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come to you that night? If I had just ignored it? Every day, Andrew admitted. The king would be dead. Camilla would be queen consort, and no one would have questioned it. Heart failure. Natural causes. A nation in mourning. Instead, we tore apart the monarchy, exposed the truth. There's a difference. Thomas took a long drink. Sometimes I'm not sure the truth was worth it. The pain it caused, the division. People still argue about it. Half think we're heroes, half think we're traitors. That's the cost of doing what's right. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will agree. But you saved a man's life. That's not debatable. Tell that to my parents. They haven't spoken to me in 3 years. Said I humiliated the crown. Betrayed tradition. Andrew leaned forward. Then they don't understand what tradition really means. It means protecting what matters. Honor, justice, truth. You upheld those traditions more than anyone. Thomas smiled sadly. You always were good with words. I've had practice. They finished their drinks. Ordered another round. Talked about their families. Their work. The ordinary details of life that had replaced the extraordinary chaos. I heard Camilla appealed again, Thomas said. 3rd time. Denied. She'll serve her full sentence. No early release. No special treatment. How's the king handling it? He's stronger than anyone expected. Still carries the weight. But he's found purpose in it. Reformed the royal household. Opened investigations into other potential abuses. Made the monarchy more transparent. Think it'll last? The reforms? As long as people like us are willing to speak up when we see something wrong, yes, it'll last. Outside, rain began to fall. Soft at first, then heavy. The Yorkshire countryside disappearing into gray mist. Thomas stared out the window. Do you ever regret it? The investigation. Everything that followed? Andrew considered the question carefully. I regret the pain it caused innocent people. The king's suffering. The damage to the institution. But do I regret exposing the truth? No. Never. Even knowing what we know now. The division. The conspiracy theories. People claiming we fabricated evidence. Especially knowing that? Because it proves why truth matters. Why we can't look away. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Thomas nodded slowly. He understood. Deep down, he had always understood. They sat together as evening fell. 2 men who had stumbled into history. Who had made choices that changed everything. And in the quiet of that pub, surrounded by ordinary people living ordinary lives, they found peace, not because the story had a perfect ending, not because everyone agreed with what they had done, but because they knew, in their hearts, they had done what was right. Miles away in a women's prison in Surrey, Camilla sat in her cell. She had aged dramatically. Gray hair, deep lines, the weight of her choices, etched into every feature. She spent her days in silence, reading, reflecting, occasionally writing letters that were never sent. Some nights, she dreamed of what could have been. A different choice, a different path. A life where ambition hadn't consumed her soul. But those were just dreams. Reality was cold concrete walls, regulated schedules, the slow passage of time. She had 20 more years to serve. 20 years to think about the moment she chose power over love, position over integrity, and in the solitude of her cell, she finally understood what she had lost. Not a crown, not a title, not even her freedom, but her humanity, the thing that made life worth living. At Buckingham Palace, King Charles walked through the gardens. Alone, the spring flowers blooming around him. Life continuing, persistent, beautiful. He thought about Camilla sometimes, wondered if she felt remorse, if she understood the magnitude of her betrayal, but mostly he thought about forgiveness, not for her sake, but for his own, because holding on to anger, onto pain, onto betrayal, it only poisoned the person carrying it. He had learned that lesson the hard way. He stopped at a bench, sat down, felt the warm sun on his face. A letter rested in his pocket. From Thomas Whitmore, thanking him for the annual note, updating him on his life, his daughter's first birthday, his wife's career, the ordinary joys that made life meaningful. Charles smiled. These were the things that mattered. Connection, gratitude, the courage of ordinary people to do extraordinary. Things the monarchy had survived, changed, evolved. But survived not because of crowns or ceremonies or centuries of tradition, but because when it mattered most, people chose truth over comfort, justice over loyalty, right over easy, and that, Charles thought, was the real meaning of royalty, not birthright, not power, not divine appointment, but the willingness to serve something greater than yourself, as the sun set over London. Charles stood, walked back toward the palace, ready to continue his duties, his service. His life, the scandal would always be part of his story, part of history, but it wouldn't define him. What would define him was what came after. The reforms, the transparency, the renewed commitment to duty, and the three people who had saved his life: Andrew, Thomas, Sarah, heroes who never sought recognition, who never wanted glory, who simply did what was right. And in the end, that was the only legacy that truly mattered. The truth had prevailed. Justice had been served. And life, despite everything, continued, imperfect, complicated, beautiful, the way it was always meant to be. As night fell over England, millions of people went about their lives, unaware that 5 years ago the monarchy had nearly fallen, that a plot had almost succeeded, that history had balanced on the edge of a knife, but it hadn't fallen, because one guard had the courage to speak up, one detective had the courage to investigate, and one prince had the courage to act. That was the real story, not scandal, not betrayal, not darkness, but light. The light that comes when ordinary people make extraordinary choices, when truth defeats lies, when courage conquers fear, and when justice, no matter how delayed, finally arrives. That was the story worth telling. The story that would echo through generations. A reminder that no matter how powerful the guilty may be, they cannot escape the reach of truth. And no matter how small the voice of the righteous may seem, it can change the world. That was the legacy of the royal plot, not the crime itself, but the courage that stopped it. And as the stars appeared over London, that courage shined brightest of all.